and you're on the leader in pure classic country, 98.7 and AM 1580, WLIJ, Middle Tennessee's radio home for the NASCAR Cup Series. And we are getting set for the NASCAR All-Star Race at North Wilkesboro Speedway. Still can't believe I'm saying that, but we're in year number 2 of it, Sunday afternoon at 4. And we're here to help us get ready for that, the Motor Racing Network's one of their turn announcers, been doing it since 97, Mr. Alex Hayden from Goldsboro, North Carolina. How are you this morning?
Hey, doing really well. Yeah, I'm with you. It's All-Star Week, North Wilkesboro Speedway. It does take some time, even though it's our second year doing it. It is still a bit unusual, isn't it?
Yes, it is, and there's a lot of things going on with it, but I want to talk about you for a moment. Alex, you're, in my opinion, one of the more positive and energized members of the MRN crew, no matter what the situation is on track. And now that I've seen that you started out with a few years as an actor, it's starting to make a lot of sense.
Yeah, it is, and there's no fun being negative all the time. I mean, you gotta look for the good in everything, I think, and that's just part of it. Whether we're sitting at a racetrack and it's pouring down rain, well, the all-time record is 40 days and 40 nights. It always quits at some point, so you gotta think it's going to stop sooner rather than later. So yeah, it's no fun being negative.
That's certainly good. And yes, last year definitely did test our patience with the amount of rain days we did have. But talking about the All-Star Race at North Wilkesboro, it's a dime a dozen as far as the storylines are concerned, from Brad Keselowski snapping the winless streak to the Larson double. We're going to try to narrow them down, starting with, how do you think this year's race is going to play out with this fresh repave at North Wilkesboro?
Yeah, I think it's going to be big as far as what we expect to see, because a couple of different things. We're going to have a new tire as far as an option tire, a much softer compound, which means extreme grip, but it will wear out much quicker than the other tires. So that gives the crew chiefs different options to play with as far as strategy goes. And the new pavement that they put down at North Wilkesboro Speedway from when we raced there last year, heck, it's going to be totally different than what it was a year ago, because the bottom lane was the only way around the racetrack last year. I expect 2 and 3 lanes of racing, even though it's a short track. I easily think we can have that here come this year. This is going to be a fun one, I think, because the history of North Wilkesboro Speedway, the new tire, and the new pavement.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think that the option tire is going to behave a little differently than we've seen it in previous times at the mile and a half?
I think it will, given the fact that it's a much softer compound. So I think it will. Obviously, time will let us know for sure. But given the tire test that was done there a few weeks back, the drivers that participated in that all feel like this is the right direction.
Switching over to what we've just saw this past weekend with Brad Keselowski snapping the winless streak from 2021, and also Ford, who started the year at Daytona on the front row, been struggling up until now and finally able to get in the winner's circle this year. How significant was that, and for all of Ford Performance, getting their mojo back, especially before we get into the summer months?
It was monstrous. I mean, think about it. All 3 of the National Series, the Cup Series, Xfinity, and the Truck Series, Ford won the championship in all 3 of them back in November. All 3 have been winless up until this point, where they finally break through and get the big win with Keselowski at Darlington Sunday night. So, that was huge. Ford has run well, if you think about it. The previous week at Kansas, we had the closest finish in series history, where Chris Buescher in a Ford lost by 1/1000th of a second. So they've been knocking on the door. Now they finally kicked the door wide open. I think this is big for the entire Ford Performance team.
And also with split attention on the 108th running of the Indianapolis 500, switching over to Kyle Larson now, how excited are you to see him do this double duty, and how do you think it'll play out with even like Harvick being a part of the practice for him at Hendrick Motorsports?
I think it's huge. And spent some time at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway earlier this week for practice, just to kind of hang out. I'm from Indiana originally, so it's kind of coming home for myself, but spent a lot of time at the Speedway for a couple of days earlier in the week. And Larson, he's fired up. He's ready to go. I think he is absolutely somebody who can make some noise, not just in the Indy 500, but obviously with North Wilkesboro Speedway, Kevin Harvick practicing his car, and Larson to race it in the All-Star race. Larson can win that. Obviously, Kevin Harvick is a champion. He's a pro. He's going to be able to get good feedback to Cliff Daniels, the crew chief, and the rest of that team. getting that car set up for Larson.
Yeah, it's crazy how Kyle Larson is just so receptive with the IndyCar community as well. Just from that sprint car background, he just seems like he's one of their own when he goes out there.
He is. He's just a phenomenally talented race car driver with the ability to hop behind the wheel of just about anything and have big success. He's won in sports cars, in the Rolex 24 Daytona, obviously won a NASCAR championship. He wins the sprint cars. He wins in all kinds of dirt racing, late models. Now he's going to get a chance to go out and run arguably the biggest race on the planet, the Indianapolis 500, in great equipment with Team McLaren, and have Rick Hendrick as a partner in that deal, with HendrickCars.com as the sponsor on his IndyCar as well. If he goes out, and he doesn't have to win the race for it to be a success. If he can run top 5 or so, that would be monumental. Last Cup driver that did the double was Kurt Busch. He finished 6th in the Indianapolis 500, came down to Charlotte on the same day and ended up getting swept up in a crash. But to finish 6th in the Indy 500 as a one-off that Kurt Busch did, to me, that sets the mark now. Kyle Larson's got to do better than that for me to think it's a far more successful trip.
For sure. Kyle Larson, a busy man all year long, but especially here in the rest of the month of May, it's going to be a pleasure to watch that generational talent do his thing. Going back to Ford as we close out here, Chris Buescher, he's been swept up in a little bit of stuff the past couple of weeks, placing second in the new closest finish in NASCAR Cup Series history at Kansas, and then getting to Darlington, having the mix-up with Tyler Reddick, and just getting upset after the last couple of weeks. Do you see that beef continuing as we head into the All-Star race?
Well, to me, being the positive, I think that the positive in all this is Chris Buescher's battling for wins, coming right down to the checkered flag. And, I think that's the biggest thing about it. The other thing I think that you can really hang your hat on if you're Chris Buescher is the fact that even though you're coming up short, as well as you're running, Buescher's become a factor. And he's now got a handful of wins under his belt as he switched over to Roush Fenway Keselowski Racing. No, he hasn't broken through yet, but as close as he's been the last couple of times, he had every right to be upset with Tyler Reddick at the conclusion of Darlington, with Reddick just absolutely coming up and door slamming him. But I think Chris Buescher is going to be a factor. I think Buescher is going to win more than one race this year before it's all said and done.
Certainly possible. Man, we are just blessed with all these storylines. We're in for another great year with the All-Star race at North Wilkesboro Speedway with the fresh repave. You can catch it here Sunday afternoon at 4 p.m. here on WLIJ. Alex Hayden, it was a pleasure to speak with you, and safe travels for the rest of this season.
I appreciate that very much, and thanks for having me on the show.
It's the NASCAR All-Star race from North Wilkesboro Speedway, Sunday afternoon at 4 p.m. with the Motor Racing Network on WLIJ. Stream it anywhere you go on WLIJ. Radio.com and the free WLIJ 98.7 mobile app.